Good evening everyone. If you don't know, you should know. My name is Rameez and I am a filmmaker and a film critic, and if you're like me and you were uninterested in Suicide Squad, you might have been questioning yourself, what should I do this weekend? Well, you know what I did? I sat home and watched season 1 of Stranger Things, and let's talk about it right now.
Saw something that he shouldn't have.
Stranger Things is a TV show that aired on Netflix. It is created by the Duffer brothers, with many of the episodes being directed by Sean Levy, director of Night at the Museum and Real Steel. And it takes place in the town of Indiana, the city of Indiana, should I say. Birthplace of Larry Bird and where Reggie Miller played, if you didn't know. This is how you do nostalgia right. This show falls in with films such as Midnight Special and TV shows such as Mr. Robot, which don't do anything wholly original, but because of their character work and their love letter to nostalgia is so genuine, it is highly entertaining. Now, how does this show do nostalgia right? Well, for one, it doesn't pander to the time period. The show takes place in 1983, and there's no feel or message even where anyone goes, hey, do you know what? The 80s were so great. There's no subtext of that. Unlike some terrible movies such as Terminator Genesis, which was basically just, hey, do you guys remember how cool Terminator was? And The Force Awakens was basically, hey, do you guys remember how cool Star Wars was? So like I was saying, Stranger Things does pay homage to a ton of films such as The Andromeda Strain, E.T., The Goonies, Back to the Future. But like Mr. Robot, it doesn't rest on just copying those elements. It takes those elements and creates a new storyline with it. This show is basically the movie Super 8 J.J. Abrams made if it was good. So the plot is centered around two people, two kids. One of them is a missing boy named Will Byers, who goes missing in the very first episode, and the second is a little girl, a bald girl, who has escaped from a science facility of sorts. Her name is only known as 11, and she has been found by a group of 4 boys, now 3 since Will is gone, and that group is led by a boy named Mike. The character work here done on the kids is fantastic. Each one of them is separable from one another through their interests, through the way they think, through their physical appearances. They have more than one trait to identify them as. It's not like, oh, that's the guy with no teeth, that's the black one, that's the leader of the group. It goes so much more deeper than just surface level character building. The biggest names on this show are Winona Ryder, David Harbour, and Matthew Modine. Did I miss the memo, by the way? When was everyone in love with Winona Ryder, by the way? I see all these YouTube comments on the trailers like, I'm only gonna watch this for Winona Ryder. Was she ever great? And just like how I think about her generally, I don't think her performance is that great in the TV show as well. It's on the nose, it's a cliched grieving mother performance. Nothing special, honestly. The best performance of this show is by David Harbour as the police sheriff. He's the most interesting character, and he's rather similar to the protagonist from True Detective Season 1 and True Detective Season 2. You combine Rust Cole with Colin Farrell's character, you get David Harbour. He's got a ton of charisma as well. I was rooting for this guy the most to crack the case first. Plus, I just love how he randomly punches people in this TV show. That's pretty awesome. But seriously speaking, he gets the best arc in this show, the most emotional arc as well. It's a very similar arc to Clint Eastwood's in The Line of Fire, where a wrong has happened to him in the past and now he is getting a chance to right that wrong. Matthew Modine is friggin' cool as well. He plays the silent assassin type. He doesn't talk that much. His eyes do the acting for him, and he glares a lot in this show. But he also looks like he's auditioning for a Jim Jarmusch movie. If they were making a movie about Jim Jarmusch's life, that hair is amazing. The kid cast brings a lot of innocence and a sense of adventure to the show, whereas the adult cast adds maturity for this story. And the story is about MKUltra, brainwashing, and human specimens and experiments. The music of this whole show, the soundtrack and the score, is incredible. The soundtrack is a ton of 80s music and music that sounds like 80s music, such as The Clash, which is 80s music, and then you get score done by Vangelis, who sounds like 80s music in all of his music. But the score is rather modern for today. Lots of synthesizers and keyboards in the score. If you look at films which came out in the 70s, such as Thief, which had its score done by Tangerine Dream. Very electronic and techno music for that film. And back then, people were kind of put off by it. However, when you watch Thief right now, it comes off as way ahead of its time. It sounds cool to listen to this techno music when a guy is drilling through a vault. So I think they were going for that same impact in Stranger Things, using a sort of modern score for a story that takes place in the 80s. Adds a little bit of contrast and, you know, fits the time period as well, because people were doing that back in the 80s and 70s. And again, it's another instance of nostalgia done right by Stranger Things. Everything except the plot of this show is based in nostalgia. This is the benefit of a TV show, man. The self-learning character. In a movie, because you have time constraints, you cannot have a character learn about him or herself and make it feel organic, again, because of the time constraint. Sure, it works sometimes in a film like The Bourne Identity, but it is something that belongs on television more. The character of Eleven has a real arc, the pacing feels real, and the action she takes in her quest of knowledge are all entertaining. One of the best is when she turns on the TV and sees an ad for Coke, which leads to a flashback. This is also a horror show, and like a good horror film, such as Alien, it doesn't show you the big threat at all. And it relies on the biggest weapon of the audience, imagination. There are a few negatives, however, but I don't think people will have as much of an issue as I did. The character writing is far superior to the dialogue in this show. There are instances where exposition is just plainly said, on the nose exposition. The only thing to make it more on the nose would be putting a title on the screen saying, "This is exposition. We're explaining the plot to you." And there's one really weird sequence of editing which just makes you roll your eyes and ask yourself, boy, these people think we're that dumb, don't they? And it elaborates on Eleven's past. And it happens in front of Winona Ryder and David Harbour's characters. The problem is they flash back to images which they were not there for. But both characters, Ryder's and Harbour's, had no instance of meeting Eleven, but they flash back to stuff with Eleven, and it just doesn't make sense. However, the show ends on a really high note, and every character ends their arc, and they end their arc on the poetically right ending, except for Nancy, in my opinion. But again, it's still a poetically right ending, especially David Harbour's character. There's a sequence where they play a song by Moby and it flashbacks to him and his past, and that scene got me really choked up, I'm not gonna lie. This is a pretty great show. It's only 8 episodes long, and that breezed by like that. It has excellent characters and very good aesthetic as well. So check this show out instead of going to the movies. We're in August. Everything coming out is going to be crap. Stay home, watch TV. 4 out of 5 for Stranger Things. Thank you so much for watching, people. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that free subscribe button. Until next time, however, remember to love yourselves.